Um, all right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to GVN Interviews. And today I'm talking to director Michael Schwartz about his short film, Snatched, which you can see right now on Hulu as part of their bite-sized Halloween collection. So, first of all, I loved the short film. I thought it was brilliant. It was definitely among my favorite in what I think is already like a stellar collection.
Totally.
Um, so, jumping right in, how did you come up with the idea of Snatched?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I wrote it back in the spring, around May, in response to the hoopla around the Don't Say Gay bill. As a queer creator, it hit close to home, but my hope was that it scared a lot of people. And a lot of politicians and corporate leaders were putting out pretty hollow statements around the Don't Say Gay bill while, financially supporting other politicians who did support it. And I sort of couldn't stop laughing about it, about the sort of absurdity of the situation, and how people sort of are quick to virtue signal these days in social media and press statements, and then not take any action behind their statements, right? So it sort of immediately made me think of Aliens and the body snatchers lore, which dates back to 1956 in my hometown of Marin County. And I thought, wouldn't it be so funny if a kid came out as gay in a horror movie, but the horror is that the parents were over enthusiastic about it. And that sort of led me on this train of, how many expectations could I subvert in 10 minutes? And that hopefully that would be an experience that would be fun and a wild roller coaster, but would also make you think afterwards and sort of live on in your brain and in your conversations after you watch the film.
Absolutely. And I think as a queer person myself, I found this short film to be equal parts funny, but also profound. And it's interesting because my takeaway was I think that you can sometimes the wrong kind of support can be just as harmful as, like the extreme opposite.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think I'm 100% inclusive with my satirization here. I'm not targeting any specific group. I have a good sense of humor about it myself, as does everyone involved. My hope is that we can sort of continue a dialogue around what actions as allies are actually harmful or can even create acts of violence. Obviously the end of the film, which I won't spoil for those who haven't seen it yet, is meant to make you sort of rethink everything that preceded it. Because another way a trope is subverted is oftentimes in horror, as you're aware, there may be a queer supporting character, but very rarely are they at the center of these films. And oftentimes they're sort of, the comedic relief, or they give a wisecrack here and there. And so my, queer protagonist is actually the straight man, so to speak, in this film, right? He has a sense of humor about himself, but in the situation at first, but he's not making wisecracks. Everyone around him is. And that was another sort of point of subversion that was important to me, to sort of recontextualize what a queer character can offer in a horror film.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of reminded me of when I first came out. My mom in particular was a little bit, once she got sort of acclimated to the idea that this is who I am, she went through a phase where it was like, to a lesser degree, I think like the mom character in the short film. So I was like a little like, oh shit, that's kind of not too far from sometimes reality.
Yeah, I was just going to say what's so funny about that is the queer people that I've talked to that have watched the film, viewers of color, they all sort of say they saw it as horror all along. And it's when I have conversations with, predominantly straight people, older people, they think it's just a comedy and then it's kind of crazy at the end, but they sort of don't understand the experience of horror for the first 3/4 of it, which I think is sort of an interesting litmus test. It sort of makes you hopefully think about why you experienced it that way.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting to hear because yeah, it's very different because again, it was funny, but then the horror I think is definitely how close to maybe real life this is for some people. Oh yeah. So now what was your favorite scene to film?
Oh goodness, they were all so fun. I think the two that come to mind are certainly the kitchen scene. Um, you know, Obviously, I struck a gold mine with Tatiana and Brendan as well, who, because they're married in real life,
Hmm.
have a pre-existing chemistry, of course, and sensibility. And in between takes, they're sort of riling each other up, and they're so good at playing. And the culture on set is really important to me as a filmmaker. That it feels safe, that it feels like people have a voice, and that it feels like people can play. I am by no means. There are plenty of lines that are ad-libbed. I mean, Tatiana's tongue pop, her sad tongue pop, as we refer to it, she just did that out of nowhere. And if you watch Brendan's face, he's trying so hard not to laugh. Her seatbelts line at the top of the car scene, that's all her. They were just playing. So that was fun. And then the neighbor scene was great. The blonde mom at the end is one of my childhood friends, Jenna Johnson. The two older neighbors, there's a lot of Easter eggs throughout the film. That is a particularly fun one. The grandparents are played by Sid Ganis and Nancy Holt Ganis. Sid is the former president of Paramount, president of the motion picture, the Academy, and was the head of Lucasfilm for many years. And so to have him on set as someone who worked on sci-fi and adventure, on some of the biggest movies of all time, and to have him looking over my shoulder at the monitor and be a part of the playfulness on set was just like the biggest treat in the world.
Yeah, that's great. I think my favorite scene has to be the Shining
Yeah.
parody.
Oh, cool.
So did
Not
you
everyone gets that. I have to tell you,
yeah,
Mike,
really?
and that's totally fine. Like whenever I'll be in conversation, someone will say, "Oh, that Shining reference," and then people will say, "What Shining reference?" And I hope, all those things are just to make you enjoy it more, right? And to make you feel included in the storytelling. So I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Yeah. No, I was like that meme where it was like
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV for sure.
um
For sure.
did you keep Yas Queen?
I didn't.
Aw.
And I have to say that one of our team members from 20th Digital Studio, Elizabeth Gelly, she came up with the Yas Queen. Originally, it was a Harry Styles fan in the original script. And then I was told I could not use Harry Styles' likeness. And she had the brilliant idea of saying, what if it was Yas Queen? And I think it's so funny because he says, "Give me Yas Queen." Even this morning, I was like, "Oh, what if the kid in return said Yas Queen?" Like he doesn't quite understand what's happening, and obviously it's in lieu of "Give me the bat, Wendy" instead of Joey. But no, I hope our set designer, our production designer Eric Flatmo has it because he made it from scratch.
Nice.
The whole house was staged. That was an empty house that Eric, our production designer, staged in 24 hours and came up with all the props. So props to him.
Yeah, that's incredible. It looks very lived in. It looks very, like homey.
Yeah.
So what I know you kind of already answered this, but like what would you want the takeaway to be for the short film?
Yeah, I think my job as a filmmaker is to ask questions
Mm.
and to not prescribe answers. So my only hope is that you laugh and have a good time, and then you think a little bit about it afterwards, and maybe engage in conversation with a friend or perhaps a queer person in your family. Um, Obviously, there's many different ways to interpret the allegory or allegories. Back in 1956, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers was an allegory from McCarthyism. The 78 version with Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum, that was all post-Vietnam, sort of the end of the counterculture movement. It's always been a San Francisco set story. So my hope is that, whenever a body snatcher story happens and every 10 to 15 years, it always reflects the times we're in. And the metaphor for me perfectly sort of reflected 21st century identity politics, and obviously the pendulum swinging the other way. In all other body snatchers movies, once the aliens make duplicates of you, they make you dead-eyed and sort of emotionless. And sort of another point of subversion is, what if it went the other way? What if alien copies of you were actually overly emotional in our, Twitter climate, where everyone is just sort of yelling at each other and not really listening to one another anymore, which is why Joey keeps telling his father, just listen to me. So that's my hope, is that people sort of leave the film listening a bit more.
Great. And lastly, let's say a studio gave you a blank check and said you could make any project you wanted. What would that be?
Clearly Snatched, the feature-length version.
Right. Yes.
I mean, there's so many, I'll say that for a few reasons. One is, I love that this is a combination of everything I care about, right? It is both horror, sci-fi, it is queer, and it also tackles things that are important to me and important to the people I love. It's set in my hometown, and this trio of actors are, come on, Emmy-winning Tatiana Maslany and Misha and Brendan, who are stars in their own right. And they look like a family. I mean, you look at them, they look like a family. So, if I got a blank check, which would never happen in a million years, but if I got more support, I would love to make the feature of this.
Well, if you did a Kickstarter, I would certainly support that 100 million%, because I think that this is such a cool idea that it would make such an awesome feature-length film. Yeah. And I think that's all I have. But again, you all should check this out. It is on Hulu right now as part of their bite-sized Halloween. The collection of shorts is fantastic. And gosh, this was such a pleasure to talk to you.
You too, Mike. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Okay.